Hello, everyone, and welcome to our next NAP, Nonprofit Auditor's Points. I'm Irina Ryshkova, your nonprofit auditor. First of all, I want to say Happy New Year, and this is our first episode for 2026. And for me, it's a special milestone. Today's video happens to be 100th episode of NAPS. When I started this channel almost 2 years ago, I was primarily focused on nonprofits audit issues because I'm an auditor. And I realized that a lot of nonprofits don't know what auditors do, what they're looking for, and how to prepare for audit. So my NAPs were concentrating primarily on internal control and common audit findings. Over time, the channel grew. We're still very, very small, but I did receive a lot of comments from the board members, executive directors, and nonprofits or staff. And one question in particular kept coming up again and again in different forms from different organizations. That was a question about Form 990. Because every nonprofit have to file 990, regardless of the size or what they do, except religious organizations. But majority nonprofits do file Form 990. And the organization wants to know, what does it really say about nonprofits? Who actually reads it and what areas they're looking for specifically? Why do funders care so much about Form 990? And is there anything in the Form 990 that potentially can create a problem for a nonprofit? So far, I've done no NAPs regarding 990 or tax filing. And I realized that most nonprofit leaders, executive directors, and board members see Form 990 only once a year. And typically at the end of the process, when the CPA prepared Form 990 and it's ready to be signed. And unfortunately, sometimes it's a rushed process. So when everybody quickly look at it, vote and sign it in a couple hours, sometimes in a couple days, without understanding every information that nonprofit presenting it in the Form 990. So I decided that this moment would be a good idea to prepare a short series dedicated specifically to Form 990. It's going to be several NAPs, and I will communicate various issues about Form 990 that hopefully nonprofit leaders, board members, executive directors will find it very, very useful. And this episode is the first in a series. And today I want to start with the most important concept of all that I realize some nonprofit leaders are not aware of. And this is Form 990 is a public form. But what does it mean really? That means that Form 990, it's not like your individual tax return. It's not confidential, it's not private. Once it's filed, it's become publicly available in its full form, often within the days or maybe weeks through multiple online databases. Everybody can access it without asking permission, without doing anything special, login, registrations, everybody can access. And when I say everybody, it means every donors, grant makers, foundations, journalists, watchdog organizations, state regulators, competitors, and even disgruntled former employees. Everybody can use this form either for good intention for their organization or even not so good. In some cases, IRS examiners also look in the Form 990 as a starting point to see if they need to have a closer review to nonprofit. This is why I often describe Form 990 not like a tax return, but it's more like public governance and credibility document. If you compare individual tax return, it's all about primarily numbers and calculating the individual taxes due to the government. Form 990, only half of it is numbers. The rest is narratives, description about the policies, procedures, and overall governance of nonprofit organization. So what Form 990 says about the organization? First of all, what does the organization actually do? Is the program clear? Does the story that nonprofit communicates in the Form 990 make sense? And does it aligns with overall mission of the organization? It has to align. Second, how does the organization handles money? Do the financial statements appear to be stable and consistent? Are the revenue expenses are reasonable for the size of the organization and the mission of the organization? Where nonprofit getting its funding from? And if there are any unusual trends or unexplained changes from last year to this year. And lastly, how does the organization governed? Please do not underestimate it. Does it appear that the organization has independent oversight? That might come in the form of audit or outside review. How organization handles conflict of interests? Is the compensation to executive directors and other high-paying employees handled responsibly? Does the board appear to be engaged or simply listed on the paper? Many nonprofits assume that donors only care about programs. The financials and governance sections are secondary. In reality, my experience that a lot of experienced funders often look in the governance and transparency first. Because if the nonprofit has a good foundation, good governance, it can handle funds. A strong mission story means very little if the organization appears poorly governed or careless in its reporting. One of the most common misunderstandings I see that believe that Form 990 is entirely accountant's responsibility, because we hear that nonprofit will say, oh, we do have our bookkeeping firm or our CPA prepare Form 990 and we really do not worry about it because they know what they're doing. That's a very risky mindset. Even if you have a CPA firm, very experienced CPA firm, a very experienced bookkeepers who do prepare your Form 990, the nonprofit itself is legally responsible for accuracy of information. But primarily, the organization is responsible for the message that they want to send on the Form 990. Not your accountant, not your CPA can do it, but only nonprofit leaders, board members can provide the message they want to communicate to the public. Mistakes on the Form 990s do not always lead to the IRS penalties, and it should not be main concern of the nonprofit, because some mistakes can be much more consequential, but they will not be punished by the IRS. We've seen nonprofit organizations that lose the trust on nonprofit because the story that they tell to donors and public in the Form 990. I've seen grantmakers question governance practices based solely on the Part 4 responses that responsible for governing practices. We've seen organizations that were forced to explain themselves to state regulators because disclosures were incomplete or inconsistent. And even we as the auditors, when we take a new client, we look in their priorly filed Form 990. And if they have a lot of mistakes, inconsistencies, we do make conclusion that most likely audit gonna be more complicated because there's some inconsistencies and most likely mistakes. All of this does not mean that the nonprofit has some fraud or bad intent. It only happens very often because leadership never understood importance and how to file Form 990 from the public-facing perspective. What public? Again, regulators, donors, funders look in the Form 990 when it's filed. That's why I strongly believe that Form 990 should be treated as a document that leadership does not sign at the last minute. This document is gonna be used by public for a year until the next year another Form 990 is filed. Therefore, board members and executive directors need to understand what does it say about nonprofit. Board members do not need to understand every technical details, but they need to understand the message that the numbers and information filed on the Form 990 communicates to the public. At the minimum, leadership should review the return in details before it filed. They should confirm mission, program description, and make sure that it's in reality accurately reflects the reality. They should confirm that financial stories make sense and aligns with internal reports. They should make sure that such governance questions are answered truthfully and consistently. And definitely board members should read narratives, explanation, and not just numbers. Form 990 can either improve the trust or quietly undermine the trust to nonprofit. Most organizations do not realize which one is happening until real problem arises. I will give you an example. This summer, I had 3 interns doing internship, and we were concentrating on analyzing Form 990 and audit reports for 3 universities. They're all nonprofit organizations. And we came to very interesting conclusions after analysis, and the perceptions of the students who were my interns completely changed of those schools. And they said if they had knowledge how to read Form 990 before, they would even reconsider which schools they would apply. Again, most funders and donors are experienced readers on the Form 990. And when they make their granting decisions, they know how to read Form 990, and they spend substantial amount of time reading Form 990 for at least past couple of years. To conclude, in this new series, my goal is to walk through the most important areas of Form 990s. I will talk about nonprofit community, when they can get in trouble, what board members can do and pay attention to the Form 990 to ensure the transparency, information that they want to communicate to the public. So in the next episode, I will focus primarily on the narratives rather than return itself, numbers. We'll talk about mission, program accomplishments. Many organizations underestimate that section, and as a result do not communicate their great achievements for the past year. Looking forward to see you for the next NEP, and thank you so much for being my part of this journey. Thank you for supporting Nonprofit Auditors Points. I really appreciate it, and thank you for helping us to reach 100 episodes. I will see you next time. Be safe and have a wonderful week.